Hi, my name is Robin Blumenthal, and I'm the Education Domain Director at For Tucson. I've been an independent facilitator of the Love and Logic curriculum since 2006, and the reason I love it is because I really find that it's powerful and it's effective. I hope you will agree. Thanks for joining me for Sharing Control Equals Gaining Control. You probably already know that your kids want to have some control over their life, just like you want to have control over your life and I want to have control over mine. All of us want control. And when we feel that we don't have control, we will do anything to gain it, even if it means making poor choices, even if it means causing disruption, even to ourselves, because we want to feel that we have control and we have power. Your kids are exactly the same. I have found that parents who share control gain control because they're not so exhausted trying to control everything that they can. They're not barking orders, they're not yelling, they're not lecturing, they're not threatening. They're using a tool called choices. And when I can give my child choices in an empathetic way and in a less or not frustrated or angry way, it's really powerful. It might look something like, "Sweetheart, are you going to do your homework now or are you going to do it after dinner?" And if your child responds, "Well, I'm not doing any homework," well, that wasn't one of the options. Will it be now or after dinner? You'd be surprised that most of the time when we give our kids pause to think and time to think and are willing to allow the consequences to do the teaching, they actually can make some great choices and they will actually respond in different ways. Another option might be to say to your child, "Would you like to sit quietly at the dinner table with the rest of us, or do you need to wait and eat by yourself?" Now, when we're giving choices, there's a few rules that are very important. The first rule is we usually only give 2 choices, maybe 3, but you don't want to list a whole long list of choices. When you give your child a couple choices, the key is that you have to be okay with either choice. Now, after you're done watching this video, I do have the notes attached, so you'll be able to download a PDF and that will help remind you of the things we talked about. So giving your kids 2 choices, either of which you're okay with, is the best way to do that. Sometimes what happens is you will give your kids a choice and then you'll find yourself trying to talk them out of one of the choices. Like you might say, "Would you like to do your homework now or later?" And then suddenly you find yourself saying, "Well, you know what? We're not going to have time later, so you better do it now." Now, all of us as parents make that kind of mistake. And really the best way to do it is to say, "I gave you a choice earlier, but I'm not going to be able to follow through with that choice because I forgot we have a doctor's appointment or I forgot, whatever it was." So telling our child, "Here's a couple options for you, which would be best for you," and allowing them to make that choice is very effective. But if we find ourselves wanting to talk them out of one of the choices, then we need to start over again with 2 choices, either of which we're okay with. Now here's the secret. When you're giving your kids choices, it doesn't really matter what the choices are in a lot of ways. Would you like to sit in this chair for dinner or that chair for dinner? Would you like to wear the red outfit or the blue outfit? Would you like to sit and do your homework in your room or in the TV room? If we're okay with the choices, giving our kids control when we can is very powerful. So I encourage you to think about trying new ways that you can do that. When we're giving choices, the hardest part really, I think, is allowing our child to live with the consequences of those choices. Because sometimes we find ourselves saying, "Well, that was your choice," or "I don't want to hear it. If you're going to argue and yell, that's what happens when you choose." When we do that, anger and frustration feed misbehavior. So it's important to respond with empathy. If that were the case, I might say, "Yeah, maybe next time you'll make a different choice." Or, "I can see where you thought you would want to do homework then and where it changed to not be, as great of an idea, but that's a good learning experience." That's one of the ways we help kids build resilience, incidentally, is allowing them to see that their choices affect their life And when they make choices and they can see that this affected my life or my day in a good way or a bad day, and they experience the consequences of their choices, even if they're uncomfortable, they get through it on the other side and say, you know what? I'm able to learn from my choices. I'm able to grow from my choices. I'm able to think through the consequences of my choices. Many times I find that parents just get in this power struggle and they're constantly playing tug of war, trying to force their child to do things that really we can't force our kids to do. Think of things like brushing their teeth, going to sleep, learning, listening, obeying, eating. All of those things are really hard to force our children to do in any kind of a constructive, healthy, or appropriate manner. But when we provide choices, most of the time our kids will acquiesce, right? They'll be so busy thinking about what choice we gave them that they spend less time thinking about what's happening with that choice. Like, oh, I didn't want to do that after all. It's amazing when we consider that, and I encourage you to try experimenting. When you say to your kids, like, would you like to take your bath before the movie or after the movie? Would you like to brush your teeth after your bath or before your bath? Would you like to wear these pajamas or those pajamas? I know it sounds silly sometimes. Kids are like, but I don't want to go to bed. I know, but which pajamas would you like to wear? And if you have a really strong-willed child, they might say, didn't you hear me? I'm not going to bed. I can simply not enter the control battle and say, nice try. I guess it'll be the red pajamas. Now, when your child does that, but I wanted blue. I understand, and maybe next time you'll be able to choose faster. It's very powerful, the use of choices. It's very effective. Your kids can use choices such as, are you going to do your homework today in pencil or in marker or a crayon? Are you going to wake up at 8 or are you going to wake up at 7:30? Are you going to do your chores today or do you think you'd rather wait and do them tomorrow? It doesn't matter, again, what choices we give our children as long as we actually give them choices. So let's review a little bit. You want to give them 2 choices, either of which you're okay with. You want to be willing to make a choice if your child doesn't. And you want to allow them to, you have to be willing to allow them to experience the consequences of that choice and respond with empathy if there is a negative consequence. Let's say, for example, they have toys outside. Are you going to leave your toys outside and take the chance that they might get taken? Or do you think you want to bring them in? Now, if your child says, oh, nothing will happen, they're not going to get taken, well, I might worry about that, but they're your toys. So you do what you think is best. Now, let's say as a parent, you're like, I'm not willing to let their toys get taken. Then don't give that choice. But if you are willing, and if you're willing to say this could be a great consequence if something happens, or it's a consequence I'm willing to allow my child to experience, or it's a great learning opportunity, then let them experience that. Many times we find that we are trying to convince our children of the consequences that are going to happen. And certainly we've lived a longer life and we know how consequences happen, and we don't want our kids to have to suffer the consequences. We want them to learn from our mistakes, right? Our heart is that our kids, that we can make an easier path for them. The problem is most real learning doesn't happen that way. Most real learning happens when the consequences affect us. That's when it becomes real. Let's look at driving, for example. I might, as we happen to be teaching our 15-year-old, she'll be 16 soon, how to drive, right? She has her permit. And there's many times where I say to her, are you noticing your speed? Well, I'm only going 5 miles over. All right, well, I just want you to know that if you have a speeding ticket, that'll be yours to pay for. Well, they won't do that. Well, by law, they actually can. So I guess it's up to you if you want to follow the speed limit or take a chance. Now, I give that example because what's really happening is they're thinking, do I want to take the chance of paying for a speeding ticket? And we can do all this talking, but what's the real learning going to happen? is when they actually get pulled over, right? If you are like me and you've had a speeding ticket or two in your life, I can say that I know full well when I am choosing to not follow the speed limit most of the time, or when I'm choosing to not pay attention to the speed limit, and I'm willing to suffer the consequence. But after I've had a couple tickets, I think 2 in my life, after I drive much slower because that consequence is painful, right? And I remember it. That's the same way it is with our children. When something happens that really affects them, the learning is different. I remember when my kids were little and we would go to Chuck E. Cheese or Peter Piper. And they would say, "Oh, Mom, I was so close to winning the jackpot. I just need another $1." When they started bringing their own dollar, when we started doing allowance, and we said, "Well, you can use $1 or not," it only took about one or two times, and they would come back and say, "Do you know that those machines are ripoffs?" I had been trying to say that for years, but my saying it was not the same as their experiencing it. When I say to a child, "You better eat all your dinner, you're going to be hungry," that is my saying what happens. If I say to them, "Eat as much as you need to last you till breakfast," if I say it in such a way, "Would you like to eat more so that you're full, or wait until breakfast?" Either one is fine. I imply that I think they're strong enough to to handle the consequence, that they're wise enough to choose what's best for their body, and it allows them to learn and grow. And that is so important. It's incredibly powerful. It's a great gift that we can give our kids. It's just hard because I want to say to my child, "I think you're going to be hungry. I think you're going to be cold. I think you're going to be sad that you didn't complete that assignment. I think you're going to miss your bike if it gets stolen." All those things might be true, but when our children feel it, it makes all the difference in the world. As I said, there's a PDF attached at the bottom that has some guidelines for giving choices that you might find helpful, and also gives some great examples. It also gives you a few starting sentences. When you start with what would be better for you, you almost always end up in a choice. Or what do you think would be better? Or would you like this or that? There are certain phrases, that sentence starters, if you would, that will help us to end up in choices, especially if learning choices is harder for us. If we tend to be parents that just say, "Go pick up your toys." If you have a great obeyer, they're likely to do it. But for a lot of us, we don't. We have a strong-willed child that says, "I didn't get those toys out," or "They're not my toys," or "Why do I have to pick it up?" or "I don't see why I can't leave them here." All of those things are fine. But if we say, "Hey, why don't you pick up the toys you want to pick or keep, and I'll pick up the rest?" Or what would be better for you, to pick up the toys now or before dinner? Giving some choices helps the child think through the consequences, and often even distracts them so that they're thinking and not feeling so ready to fight you on something. I hope that you're finding this video helpful, and I hope that you will look at other videos that the Vail Family University has posted. If you have any questions, my contact information is in the bio, and I would love to reach out and help however I can. Thank you so much for joining us,